it is a national disgrace.
It is not for the government to assess the risks surrounding this football match.
We will never ever please everyone.
One football game has caused weeks of debate and outrage, and it's all about one question: who gets to watch the match? Ahead of Aston Villa's Europa League game with Israeli side Maccabi Tel Aviv, a local council group in Birmingham stopped Maccabi fans from attending. The UK government wants that overturned, but Maccabi say they wouldn't accept their ticket allocation anyway, no matter what decision is reached. So, a night of football has turned into a much bigger debate about safety and whether sport can ever be separated from politics. So, how did we get here? Well, this is a story that involves three different groups: the police, politicians and fans. And it all started with the police. The local force in Birmingham had concerns about safety, potential clashes between fans and protests relating to the war in Gaza, despite there now being an agreed ceasefire. Maccabi are Israel's most successful club and have a long history in European football, but there have been issues with their fans in previous games. A report by Kick It Out Israel found that Maccabi fans are the most likely to engage in discriminatory behaviour out of the Israeli Premier League teams.
This is undoubtedly one of the most politically charged fixtures that I can recall. Hi, I'm Dan Rowan, sports editor for the BBC, and I've been covering this story from the beginning. Birmingham's Safety Advisory Group, as it's known, which is this body that's made up of officials from the local authority, from the local emergency services, and indeed from Aston Villa as well, informed the club that they wouldn't be allowing away fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv to travel to Villa Park for the match.
The Safety Advisory Group advises the council on whether to issue safety certificates for football matches, but West Midlands Police had classified this fixture as high risk.
Now, they made that decision based on intelligence that they had, but also because of previous incidents referring to disorder that had occurred when Maccabi Tel Aviv played Ajax in November 2024 in a Europa League match in Amsterdam.
There were pro-Palestinian demonstrations taking place in Amsterdam at the time, and in court after it was alleged that some Maccabi fans pulled down Palestinian banners and flags. It was also alleged that Maccabi fans themselves were targeted just hours after the match. City officials described the violence as a toxic combination of anti-Semitism, hooliganism and anger.
While the decision to ban Maccabi's fans from Villa Park was widely condemned by many politicians, for example, there were also others who supported the West Midlands Police, who said that they were understandably nervous about some of Maccabi's supporters. And I think that viewpoint was reinforced when, in the days that followed, the Tel Aviv derby between Maccabi and Hapoel was abandoned, in fact, amid serious disorder. The police said that that decision was justified. There were pyrotechnics thrown on the pitch, for example, before kickoff. Now, both clubs said that their fans weren't to blame, but nonetheless, I think it did sort of reinforce these concerns around maintaining security around this fixture. The counter to that, of course, is that there are many clubs out there with troublemakers among their fan base, and they don't necessarily have their fans prevented from attending a match.
This isn't the first time that away fans have been banned from UEFA competitions, but on this occasion, UEFA said the final decision ultimately lies with the local authorities. The ban didn't go down well with most UK political parties, though. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, posted this the same day, saying the decision was wrong and that we won't tolerate anti-Semitism on our streets. This was then backed by other members of the government.
This fundamental principle that nobody in our country will be excluded from participating in public life because of who they are must be upheld.
Israel and Israeli teams being banned from football is continually being questioned. The very reason they're in European football competitions in the first place is because several Arab countries refused to play them. So instead, they joined UEFA in 1994. More recently, though, before the ceasefire was agreed, a United Nations Commission of Inquiry said Israel was committing a genocide in Gaza. Israel called this report distorted and false, and then the UN themselves called on UEFA and FIFA to ban the national team from competitions. So let's move on to Birmingham then, where this game is being played. It's one of the UK's most diverse cities, with ethnic minorities making up over half of the city's population. A local pro-Palestinian politician who represents an area of Birmingham called for the game to be postponed, starting an online petition that currently has just over 4,000 signatures. Aston Villa also gave stewards who might be concerned about working at the game the option to miss it, but some figures have sided with Maccabi.
Rarely has a football fixture sparked such a reaction from across the political spectrum. For example, in the days that followed, you had the far-right political activist Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, also known as Tommy Robinson, posting on social media a photograph of himself in Maccabi kit in solidarity with the club. And it's been suggested and reported that that was a factor in Maccabi's decision to announce that they didn't want to accept any official ticket allocation for their supporters if they'd been allowed to do so, if the local authorities in Birmingham had performed something of a U-turn and reversed their decision to ban them. They didn't name Yaxley-Lennon in their statement, but they did refer to unnamed divisive figures that they feared might be associated with their fan base.
Ultimately, though, this whole case mainly affects the fans. Maccabi fans in Israel were frustrated about the involvement of politics in sport.
I think it's just a feeling of disappointment, obviously for the neutral fans and obviously the Israeli and Jewish fans.
Sports, it doesn't need to involve the politics.
Others were saying some fans still want to travel and they hope that they would be safe.
Be a good security. People can go and to watch the game and separate the fans, and everything can be regular.
I don't feel like I'm going to be unsafe going to the game, but I can well understand that there are a lot of people that will feel that. I mean, I do worry that there will be trouble.
I'm not attending the Maccabi game on this occasion. The reason for this is because I travel to games on my own as a lone female, and I simply just feel a little bit too vulnerable for this particular fixture.
This has been a fascinating story to cover, and I think it's the most recent and one of the most interesting examples of sport and sports events being drawn into wider debates around geopolitics and thorny issues involving the police and politicians and security. And I think it's among the most politically charged fixtures now that I can recall. And the stakes are high here. There'll be a huge amount of scrutiny over the handling of this match, over the way that the local authorities deal with it, whether there are any demonstrations and protests around it, whether there's any violence. I think it also gives a really compelling insight into the way that sports events in recent months have been affected by the conflict in the Middle East.
The sport has always reflected the world around it and usually brings people together, but in this case it's showing how politics can pull them apart. So, does this open the door for further changes to how we experience the game?